What's up again, everybody? Today I am pumped to talk to you about this game called Varia. It's a game that I've had in my hands for a while now, and I've messed around with it a good bit, and I'm really excited to talk about this game because, well, I'll just put it this way. Look, there are a lot of games out there as far as TCGs, CCGs, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of games out there that are essentially like Magic, but like that's a genre. It's literally a genre called Magic Butt games, which is a weird way to put that, Magic Butt games, because it sounds like I'm dissing Magic, which I'm not. But what I am saying is that there's a lot of games that basically just reskin the ideas and the mechanics of Magic, the engine within Magic, you know, like a land-based system or battle line systems where you create permanents that stay around and you track life totals, and that's the game, okay? But maybe they change the flavor. Maybe it's like, you know, like set in feudal Japan, or I don't know, maybe like your cards can be used as weapons as well as like a creature, you know, some like they take one thing and they iterate on it in a cool, maybe perhaps flavorful way, and that's all well and good. Like, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That is certainly one way you could design a card game, but I personally have been very intrigued and interested in finding new card games, or card games that, you know, are out there that exist that aren't Magic Butt games. It's just like, I need a better thing. I need like a better term. This game is not one of those. This does not fall into the, it's just Magic the Gathering, but you do whatever. This is a fundamentally unique card game to itself, in and of itself, and that was the most intriguing thing for me. For this game, and I want to talk about the things that I like about Varia, what it is, what it does really well, things that I could see it improving on in the future, and why you should consider giving it a shot if you're interested in something that's just a little bit different. So Varia is a game very similar to some games like Flesh and Blood, or I guess you could technically even argue like the new My Hero Academia TCG, which is within the Universes system. This is a hero-centric card game. You are literally playing as a hero that is battling another hero. You're not like summoning little things that go out there and attack. No, you're playing attacks. You are playing down, you know, like moves, and trying to attack your opponent with physical cards in that sense, rather than like creating little creatures that do the battle for you. And that right there, all of a sudden, to me, is already an intriguing prospect, because I like this idea of a hero-centric card game that doesn't sit behind permanents, and I like something that is a little bit different and unique, and this takes different and unique to a whole different level, because, you know, in like, for example, Flesh and Blood, you're playing down an attack and your opponent's responding to this. And that is very similar to what you're doing here in Varia as well, except they take it in a whole new direction. And in order to do like some demonstrations, I gotta find a spot to put this. By the way, this is the starter set. The starter set comes with 2 decks. Starter set's only 25 bucks, which is exactly what a starter set should be priced at, by the way. Hey, if you're making a card game and you're thinking of making a starter set, please price it at $25. That's like legit the right thing to do. It comes with 2 decks. It comes with this deck here and that deck there, and by the way, this is the hero. I forgot his name. Oh, I need to shout this out. It comes with the rule book as well as some dice, and the dice are important in this game because dice are incorporated in damage dealing. But here's what I need to shout out: they straight up like start their rule book with a comic. This is so incredible. Like, I sat down, I was gonna read the rules the first time, and I'm like, oh no, stop everything. I have to read the comic before I read the rules, and that is freaking cool. Because like the comic just looks fun. I mean, it reminds me of like the, I don't know, like the 90s kind of comic. It's a fun thing, okay? And it basically talks about these two battling up, and that's exactly what you get within the starter set as well, as these two. Volcanic Warrior, I think, is this dude here. Magnius, the Volcanic Warrior, and the Sneaky Ninja Assassin guy, Boomslang, which is just a funny name. But you get these two decks within the starter set, and again, these are literal, like, straight up decks that you can play out of the box. That's one of the nice things about this game, is it's non-blind. It is non-blind product, and here, while I flip through this and talk, I'll show you exactly what this deck looks like. This is a non-blind card game in the sense that you are able to just buy the deck out of the box. And if you didn't want to buy the starter set, for example, and you just wanted to pick up literally Boomslang's deck here, you can just buy his deck, just no questions asked. There are no packs and things like that, so if you just wanted to play the game, this is one of those great games that you can easily pick up because you don't have to just like search for cards. And as you can see, the art overall, and I am kind of a sucker for art, especially like this one's really cool. The art overall is pretty good. That's something I'm going to talk about a little bit later. I like almost all of the art that I see, even like the varied art styles, like this, which is definitely more comic-y, that which matches the comic from before, but then you compare it to that, it's definitely a different overall experience on some of these cards versus others, but I'm okay with that. I don't hate that personally. There are a few pieces I will say that I'm like, ooh, that just doesn't feel like it fits, but I'll talk about that when I talk about the deck I have sleeved up. Okay, so this is not a how to play. This is more designed to kind of give you the flavor and ideas of what the game is going for, but essentially, this game plays hero-centrically with your hero and some weapons and items that stay permanently in play, the items and the weapons, but you will play cards from your hand in a timeline. Like this, for example, by the way, that art is just weird to me. But you're going to play down these attacks in what's called a timeline. You're basically creating a story. This is the way I like to think of it. You're creating a story wherein you kill your opponent, and your opponent has some agency within the story as well to, like write their own version of it. So what you're essentially going to do with a hand of cards is you are going to play down these cards in what is a timeline, and each play of a card is like a moment in that timeline. So for example, if you wanted to attack your opponent with Cranial Crash, you'd place it in the timeline. Let's just say the timeline starts here. Now, you're not paying for anything yet. You're just declaring that you want to start with that if you're the active player. And then, depending on what else you want to do, maybe you play down like other cards. I don't know, maybe you just want to like straight up play Decapitate. Maybe that's what you want to do. And so you follow up your next one with Decapitate. Now, of course, you will have to pay for things, eventually. But I do want to talk about how this all sets up first, because it's pretty fun. Let's throw down something else. Just throw it out there. We're just going to throw down Aria's Tarka. Aria's Tarka. And so you're going to create this timeline with the cards in your hand that will play out as you describe it as the active player. And once you've decided and you said like, hey, these are the things that I want to do, these are the things that I want to play and attack with, your opponent, the inactive player, has an opportunity to respond to each of those moments with their own sort of moment. Now, the interesting thing about this is that your opponent can't add moments to the timeline. So if you go, I'm going to play 3 things, your opponent can't go, well, I'm going to play 4 and, like attack you at the end or something like that. No, they have to play within your timeline, within your moments here. And that's pretty cool because it does sort of chain them to what you've already created as the active player. But they can respond with their own attacks. They can respond with their own blocking cards. Like, for example, I think it's this card. Let me see if I can flip to a card that has like a block value or that literally talks about blocking. As I flip through, there's one of these that literally says, as you can see down here, physical block, and then it has some other text and other things on there. We'll talk about the sort of the bordering in general and not go too deep into specifics. There are already, by the way, great how-to-plays out there, so I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel or go over that. I highly recommend you check those out if you want to know the deep dive how to play. But they can respond to your timeline events with their own, And after they respond, you have an opportunity to edit your own timeline. You could be like, well, I played this down, but I haven't paid for it yet, so instead I'm going to just swap it out for another card. Or maybe I'm going to buff it up. Buff something up with another card on top of that, and that may cost you more resources, which we'll talk about here in a moment, but it may make your attack stronger, and it may make your opponent's time a lot harder and take more damage. And so you're editing your timeline, maybe you're playing stuff down, and then your opponent has a chance to edit their timeline or their reactions as well. And there's, of course, you'd have to respond with things that say fast on them, which it says right there. There's these intricate rules, and I don't want to go too deep into it because this is one of the things about this game. There is a lot of complexity to it, but the idea, the general idea of playing things out like this and having your opponent respond to them, and then having you respond to yourself or your opponent, and then having your opponent respond to them until both of you say, okay, cool, I'm good with it, or I can't do anything about it, and then resolving everything and paying its cost at the end of the turn, basically, and watching it all play out. That's what's really exciting to me about this game. This idea of okay, yes, it's not just another, I'm going to take a card from my hand, play it down, deal you some damage, or make a little guy that's like a 3/3 and he attacks you. Again, there's nothing wrong with that kind of game, but this is fundamentally unique and not that. And that's what's so interesting to me. So after you fill out your timeline, you do actually have to pay for these effects that you've played out with action points, and you get 10 action points. And so, for example, in this scenario, if you can't actually pay for all of these things, there's this really cool mechanic wherein after you've finished and done whatever you can, anything left over will actually rotate to the front of your next turn, and you'll be able to play that out in your next turn. And so there's a lot of interesting complexity to it, but fundamentally you're creating this story wherein you're trying to punch your opponent in the face, or decapitate them, I guess, in the example of that card, and your opponent's responding to that. And then of course at the end of your turn you would swap places with your opponent, and they would be the active player, sort of setting up their own timeline, and you would be responding to it from there. And there's a lot more complexity to it with regards to how the stuff plays out. And one of those things I should talk about is actually in the top here, and it's why you get dice added to your starter set. So you get these dice in your starter set, and I haven't taken them out because I actually own, a lot of people own D4s and D6s, but that's all you need is a deck and D4s and D6s. Because while this attack decapitate, by the way, very graphic, while that attack, does its base damage, it can be modified beneficially to do even more damage. And the way that you modify it is by rolling dice. So this attack deals 10 damage by itself, and you can see the 10 there at the top with the D6. But in addition to that, you can roll that d6 to have some amount of variance on how much more damage it can do. So the nice thing about this is it's always, in my mind, it's always this positive feeling of rolling more damage. It feels very D&D in that respect as well. And then this bottom thing is the focus. Now that becomes really interesting because the focus of this attack is going to get compared to whatever your opponent tries to block with. And in that comparison, if you win the comparison of numbers, or tie, I think even if you tie, then your attack will deal some amount of damage. But if your opponent wins and has modified their stats accordingly, then they stop your attack and they kind of block it all out, or they block a portion of it if you win. So there's intricacies there as well, and I like the addition of the die rolling. When I was first approached with this game and they said it's a card game but there's dice rolling involved to create variance, my first thought was, ooh, that can be a little scary, because dice rolling to create variance has the inherent ability to feel really bad when you miss. And luckily this game executes it in a way that it doesn't necessarily feel really bad. It actually has perhaps a feels good kind of a moment. I'm sorry, I couldn't look at that decapitate card anymore. I had to switch to cranial crash. Which I love this art. I think this art is fantastic. Really, really beautiful piece of art. While we're on the general subject of art and aesthetic, I generally like the aesthetic of the game as well. I'm a sucker for theme, and I'm a sucker for aesthetic. I like the bordering. I like that it's got iconography that is very understandable once you've read through the rule book. I like the layout overall of the card. There is a lot of information presented, like physical attack, strength. You've got pips over here, pips over there, dice rolling mechanics, and then of course text. And there's a lot of that sort of thing presented on each card. You've got a keyword, you've got a magical attack, fire. There's a lot of general complexity to it. And so you do have to take all of that in while you're looking through your cards and figuring out how the deck plays out. But once you've done that, and once you've sort of gotten your feet wet with the game, that complexity becomes really fun with regards to like what you can actually do within the game. And it is one of those things that you're going to have to convince whoever you want to play with that, like, hey, it's going to be a little weird at first, especially if they've already played trading card games. It's going to be a little weird at first to try and wrap your head around some of these interactions or the way that you kind of play out turns. But once you've done that, it creates moments that are like really, really crazy, really fun, and really impactful. When a die roll like comes up big, or when you like slam down this card on top of another card that has a really cool interaction, you have very exciting moments that are just different than what you get in some other TCGs, like the magic butts, right? One of the other things that I really like about this too is they lean heavily into this idea of theme and hero-centricism, and this is something that Flesh and Blood does as well, very, very wonderfully. So you have all of these different theme decks. All of these, by the way, are straight up playable out of the box. They're designed to be like, you don't need to buy packs to like fill them out. You literally just buy this, you walk away, and you go play the game. So you have like Divine Paladin, which has its own fundamentally unique mechanics, compared to like Cosmic Mage or the first deck that I straight up opened because it's pirate themed. Come on, Death Pirate. You can't not open the Death Pirate first. But then you have like Sixth Blade, which is sort of a ninja-y kind of a character. A little bit less ninja-y than I expected, almost like samurai-esque. Mystic Monk, which felt more ninja-y in that sense. And then probably the one that I fell in love with the most because it's freaking amazing looking, Dragon Knight, looks absolutely amazing. I just got to open this one. This one's incredible. This one has perhaps, in my opinion, the best art in the set. Most even across it, too. These, by the way, you can buy every single deck. They have, the way they set this up, you can buy like a starter set, right, for 25 bucks, which comes with these two decks, actually, which is pretty good because you can actually buy them for, each of them for like 17 bucks themselves. You can buy all of these individually for 17 bucks, but you can also just buy the entire like season. They call it by seasons, which I think is really cool. You can buy the entire season, sort of LCG-esque, like a living card game, for like 99 bucks, which is kind of cool. Just look at the art. If this does not make you think of like Siegfried and Nightmare from Soul Calibur, then I don't know what does. Like even this piece, which is different in tone to like the more anime-esque art, like that's so cool. It is so cool. Like this, it looks like a tapestry. Oh my god, the art on this is so neat. This also reminds me, this deck is an interesting one. Like that one's a little weird. This deck's an interesting one wherein it plays around with one of the other mechanics within the game, and that mechanic is like disengaging and engaging. So in addition to just playing out attacks and like attacking your opponent, you also have this ability to step closer to them physically or step away from them and disengage from them and play ranged attacks. By the way, these are like cool little tokens that you can create. Really, really neat deck that plays around with like this idea of engaging and disengaging. As you can see right here, this little symbol here tells you at like the start of a turn or end of a turn to engage or disengage, which puts you closer or further away from your opponent. And in doing so, more of your physical attacks might hit, or if you want to disengage more and do a ranged attack, then your ranged attacks give you like the ability to hit from far away, which is really interesting. Where is that? Where's the one? Ranged. Here it is, for example. So it's a magical attack, and you're literally just breathing fire on your opponent. This deck is super cool looking. Super, super cool looking. And there's, like I said, there's a lot of like little things that you can do within the game that just kind of compound upon each other. And that, I will say this, that to me is perhaps the toughest sell as far as the game is concerned. Because while it is incredibly thematic and incredibly cool to have like this unique system in place that doesn't really feel quite like anything else, that speaks to good game design. It is also kind of a bear to wrap your head around. Particularly, I don't know, for me, because I've played a lot of different card games and stuff like that, there were moments where I was like reading the rule book and I thought to myself, wow, okay, so now I have to think about the way that I'm playing this thing out. I'm not just playing down a card and doing the effect. I'm like playing down a card and my opponent can respond and then I can respond and then I could be disengaged and then I could engage my target and then like I can, you know, use this and then we roll dice. And like, so for me, there is this level of complexity that is a little tricky to like stomach at first. That is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just something you kind of have to understand from the drop, that it is going to be a little bit complex. But if you're into something that is going to have a little bit of complexity up front, then this may be a fun one for you. Now, the other thing that does feel a tiny bit off-putting is the kind of uneven art style, which I talked about on a few cards, and I noticed it a lot. Oh no, focus up. Focus, there we go. I noticed it a little bit in the pirate deck, which by the way, the pirate deck is pretty sweet looking. I was like super into it. It's like ghost pirates, which is fun. But like, okay, this piece right here, I'm really sad about this piece of art because like you look at this and it almost looks like a photograph, like kind of old school photoshopped. And I don't want to like kind of hate on art too much because, you know, it's one of those things where like I like artists. I appreciate artists for what they do, but this piece feels fundamentally different to something like that, right? Like there is incredible amounts of difference between these two pieces of art, and even just like between these two pieces of art. Like it just feels, I mean, even like these two look like they make a little bit more sense. But yeah, like and this, like that is literally a photo of a guy doing that, and then they put like the ghostly pirates around him. I don't know, man. I'm just saying I don't like that. Like I really don't like that. We could have gone with something. And then look at this. Like right after that, you have Luck Drinker, which looks really cool, and it looks way better in person than it does on camera behind this sleeve. And I'm sad about that. Like Jeering Ploy looks awesome. It's weird that the art style does feel uneven at times. It's like every time I see that, I just don't want to play that card, which is kind of bad, but it's just how I feel. Okay, it's how I feel. Outside of those couple of things, I really like the idea of this game, and I like the mechanics, and I like the uniqueness of the game in general. Like even just something like this, which reminds me of Genesis Battle of Champions. They have a card that basically does something like this, where you move out of a square into a different square. This is sort of the same idea. You backflip, you disengage, and your play is literally just to make it harder for your opponent to do something. And that's the kind of thing that I like. They've created a card game wherein you feel like you are the hero doing these moves and like actually engaged in physical combat. And so it's really cool in that respect to have a game kind of like this. If, by the way, if you're curious about picking this stuff up, I'm going to put a link in the description. There's literally just, they have their own website. Playvaria.com is where you want to go to pick that up. And they do have like how to play videos. They've got like lore and stories, and I can't seem to focus anything ever at all. So they have like places that you can go to pick up on how to play the game. They've got a Discord. I'm in the Discord. You should go check out their Discord as well. You could probably do some pickup games there. They play on Tabletop Simulator as well. But this is a game that I think you can definitely play over like webcam if you want to play online with people. Lining up things on the like the timeline does feel a little weird on camera, I bet. But you can make it work just fine. And then, of course, playing it on Tabletop Simulator is super easy. And then if you want to pick these up and just like go one deck versus one deck, and you know, like maybe you pick up the starter set or something like that, try it with a friend, see if you like it. this is, again, why all starter sets should be 25 flippin' dollars, people, because it is so easy to go, okay, you know what? I'm just going to pick up one of these and try it out, and if I like it, cool. And if I don't, I didn't really spend much money. It's like the price of movie tickets if people go to the movie theaters anymore, which you should, aside. That's a weird aside, but there it is. So this is a really fun alternative to the magic butt games out there. I highly recommend you check out games like this. And again, if you want to check this out, just go to that website, see what you think about it. I will also say this. If you would like, I think I'm going to send out 2 of these decks. Leave a comment down below. I may send 2 of these decks out. I'm not sure which ones I'm going to send. Maybe it's like the mage versus the, one of the ninjas. That might be kind of cool. If you'd like to have one of these sent to you, leave a comment down below with what intrigues you about this game. What you think might be fun about this, what you might play, which of these heroes sparked your interest the most, and why was it the Dragon Knight? Because it's the freaking coolest looking one ever. Let me know in a comment below. I think it's a lot of fun, and I'd love to hear your opinions on a game like this. What you think about the complexity of what I just described in a very, very short detail, and then like how you think you would adapt to that going forward. So let me know in a comment below what you think about Varia, the hero-centric card game. As always, everybody, thanks for watching.